In this class, we will learn about the advanced features that you can utilize while developing scenarios. First, let's take a look at the debugging feature. If problems occur while running a scenario, you can switch to debugging mode to view the execution status, such as the variable values, at the time of the process stop in the debugging console. To stop the running process and switch to debugging mode to figure out the cause of a problem, select the target activity and press F9, or right-click the target and select Add Breakpoint in the quick menu. When a breakpoint is encountered during process execution, the process will be temporarily stopped and Debug Console window will be displayed as follows. In the Debug Console, you can click Stop to stop the process. If you click Next Step, debugging will be preceded by running the next step. If you click Resume, the process will be run until the next breakpoint is reached. Then, you can enter the variable name in the variable field and click Execute to view the variable value at the time the process stopped. You can modify the variable value if required. Next, let's learn about the custom library feature. In the project, users can define a customized library or import an external library and use it just like any other internal library. The custom libraries include JavaScript, MS Workflow Activity, and MS.NET Library. To briefly review the features, JavaScript requires user to compose the body part of the library in JavaScript. MS Workflow Activity may be utilized by importing libraries created based on MS Workflow Activity Framework. For this, the DLL files to import and all other dependent files need to be copied in advance into the folder for the custom library. MS.NET Library may be utilized by importing libraries created based on .NET Framework. Likewise, the DLL files to import and all other dependent files need to be copied in advance into the folder for the custom library. When a project is created, 3 different types of libraries are included in the project by default. They are custom libraries for processing dates, mathematics operations, and text strings, which are readily available for users when developing a project. So, let's find out how to utilize activities. Utilizing the input box activity in the system library, let's take data input in the 2020-May-31 format. Then, utilizing the custom library, let's convert the data into the 2020-05-31 format and output it to the message box activity in the system library. First, let's create a task. In the created task, add input box take data input in the date format and store it in a variable. Then, by utilizing the string replace all activity in the system library, convert the data format. In the arguments area, entered this.minputstr, which stores the input data in the input string field. In the from field, enter a dash, which is the character we need to replace, and in the to field, enter an empty character, which will replace the dash. After that, utilize the message box activity to view the changed date data. Next, let's learn about the shared resource feature. Shared resources refer to assets that are registered on the orchestrator server to be shared between the group members. In other words, this feature allows you to manage the shared files or encrypted text strings for RPA Designer and RPA bots on the server. They are kept updated to the latest version before they are used and are controlled based on group authority. Data requiring security protection is encrypted. To add shared resources on the user portal, access the System menu and select Shared Resource. After clicking the Add button, you can add resources in the Add Shared Resource pop-up window. The type of shared resources may be set as file or string, and you can select the Secure Data option. After entering the information, click the Save button and click the OK button in the pop-up window to save the settings. The shared resource has been added. Shared resources that are in use after registration can only be modified, and they cannot be deleted by users. So, let's find out how to use shared resources. On the Designer screen, go to the Shared Resource tab and click here to add new item to display the Shared Resource List window. There, click the shared resource to add and click the Import button to add the resource on the Shared Resource tab. Then, in the Properties window of the activities that will utilize the shared resources, you can enter the asset instead of this or global. Lastly, let's learn about the API integration feature. Brity RPA provides an interface for API integration with external systems. For API integration with an external system, one of the web libraries called sendRequest is utilized. The sendRequest activity implements an interface to integrate with an external system by calling REST APIs via the HTTP protocol. For this, in the sendRequest activity properties, the call method, URL of the API, header information, and body information must be configured. The result of the execution will be stored in the variable specified in the response property, and the result of the response can be viewed via the message box activity. From now, let's take a close look at the advanced features of Brity RPA. The exercise will include 2 examples for utilizing a custom library and inquiring data by utilizing an IPA. Let's begin the first exercise. Let's begin the exercise for creating and utilizing a custom library. First, define the work process as follows and design the basic process that will be implemented by utilizing RPA. Then, create and execute tasks and review the result. Now, let's find out how to actually create tasks. First, create a new process. We will name it Custom Sample. After that, right-click Custom Libraries and select New Custom Library. Enter Add Day for the library name and select JavaScript for the library type. In the description field, enter Custom Sample for the description about the library. And then, click the Create button. When the Custom Library Edit window is displayed, enter the JavaScript code in the window. Set the input variable as InDay, and in the source code, define value as the result of the output function. When the editing is done, click the Save icon to create a custom library. Now, by utilizing the newly created custom library, let's create a process we will actually use. In the new project, create a process named CustomExe, and from the system library, add an input box to receive date input. For the input variable to be used in the input box, register a variable called this.mInputStr. And then, add the AddDay custom library we created earlier. For the output variable of the function, register a variable called global.gResult. Set the arguments of the InDay custom library as this.mInputStr. Lastly, add a message box to display the output value. Now, let's execute the process. When you execute the process by clicking the Run button, an input box will be displayed. Enter 2020-05-31 in the input box and click the OK button. After the AddDay custom library is executed, the result variable will be output in the message box. In the message box, you can see that 7 days were added to 2020-05-31, and the result was converted into 2020-06-07 format. Let's begin the second exercise. In the exercise, we will call an external API by utilizing the send_request library. So, why don't we try calling the best restaurants around Busan Metropolitan City data provided by the Public Data Portal? Because REST APIs utilize the HTTP protocol, the resource is specified with a URL, and data transmissions are generally performed in the JSON or XML format. Design the work process and basic process as follows, then create and execute tasks and review the result. Now, let's begin the implementation. First, obtain a permission in advance via the Request Data menu. Because the API calling method will be identical regardless of the type of information, you can proceed with this exercise with any other information you're interested in. After completing the application for utilizing the API, view the detailed information of the API. In this example, the URL, service key, and API message details required for this exercise could be found in the My Page menu of the Public Data Portal. First, run the designer and create a task. Then, in the Flow Control library, connect the Execute Script activity to the flowchart. In the Execute Script activity, create a script to set the parameters required for calling the API. The API we will be calling requires a parameter definition consisting of the numbers of rows, the number of pages, and the return method. Enter the following script in the script item of the Execute Script activity properties. Then, define the sendParam variable to store the parameters. Now, let's call the API with the value stored in the this.sendParam variable. First, define the sendResult variable to store the call result and the URL variable for the URL address. Specify the URL variable using the URL address provided on the Public Data Portal site. This value can be found in the detailed information of the best restaurants around Busan Metropolitan City API we found on the Public Data Portal site. Then, connect the Send Request activity on the web. Go to the Properties screen and assign the result value variable, this.sendResult, as the value of the response item in the output area. In the REST area, keep getForMethod, set content type to JSON, and enter this.url plus this.sendParam for the URL, which is the combined value for the call address and the parameter. When the process is executed to this point, the REST API will be called with the set parameter. Now, let's configure the process to return the result. Define the result.json variable to store the result. After defining the variable, connect the assign activity in the Flow Control library. Then, in the assign activity properties, assign the previously defined this.result.json variable as the value of the variable item, and use JavaScript in the value item of the activity area to parse the returned value. When the process is executed to this point, the result value will be returned after the API has been called. Now, let's add a logic to decide whether or not the call was successfully performed. This logic will be helpful if errors occur during the call process. In the Flow Control library, add the if activity. Then, in the Properties window, specify the 00 value conditions in the expression field of the conditions area. The value 00 indicates that a normal header code was returned. By utilizing the assign activity, we will design the logic to store the returned value in the result CNT variable, which is a variable for the number of views, if the call result is normal. First, declare the result CNT variable. connect the Assign activity to the flow. And, in the Assign activity properties, assign this.resultCNT as the value of the variable item in the output area. After that, specify the number of views in the value field of the activity area. This time, we will design the flow to display a message box to indicate that an error occurred and terminate the process flow if the result value is false. In the system library, connect the message box activity to the false condition of the if activity. In the argument field of the message box, which is for the message content, enter the text to indicate an error. Then, set the flow to terminate the process by utilizing the terminate flow activity after outputting the message box. Now, let's run the returned result. We can see that the process has been successfully performed, and the total number of items is 530. The returned restaurant information consists of a combination of various values for the business type, industry, and business name. We had information for multiple restaurants returned and viewed the JSON result in the message box.